Hello Paul, this is Paul Dornan, who's come in today to Young Lives to tell us a bit about Facing the Consequences of Childhood Poverty, which will be published on the 27th of March. Paul, welcome, thanks for coming today. Could I start by asking you just to explain to us or to tell us why you've written this book?
So why did we write this book? We wrote this book to try to summarise the key findings coming out of the Young Lives study. So Young Lives is a unique study, a really exciting, unique study, which has followed the lives of 12,000 children in its core sample, growing up in 4 countries: Ethiopia, India, Peru and Vietnam. It's followed children in many different communities across those countries to try to see what happened in their lives. And so the question is, what does that all add up to? There have been many, many findings coming out of that study, and so this book puts those findings together, and it reflects on what some of the implications might be for policy and programming to try to do better for children growing up in poverty.
What does the book tell us?
The book tells us that these children grew up in a period of remarkable change. There have been economic growth, but yet there are inequalities that are very, very evident within this book. They're between children by their household wealth level, by the ethnicity of the household, the family, by gender sometimes, and by parental education levels as well, and by location. And sometimes those differences, those inequalities intersect, meaning that some children are left far behind. What we do in the book is we try to use a life course perspective. So we use all of those years of data that we've got of those children growing up to try to look at what mattered most in early childhood, in the period before school, during the early school years, and during the adolescent period and into young adulthood. And we try to put that together to see what mattered most across all of those life phases to try to inform policy.
The last thing is, how do you think the book will be useful for others?
The first conclusion I draw from the book is that there are no magic bullets, but there are wise investments. And we try to draw out 5 key messages from the book that I think are really important for policymakers, for people developing programmes for children. The first conclusion that we draw is the absolute importance of extending the coverage of social protection. Social protection has been a very prominent policy area in recent years, but coverage is often still low, and it's really, really important to try to increase coverage for children to ensure that household background wealth doesn't undermine the chances that children need in order to be able to flourish in their later lives. The second conclusion that we draw is the absolute vital importance of starting strong in early childhood. Early childhood is a critical human development period, and what happens during early childhood is going to have lifelong results. So ensuring that the right things are in place during early childhood, that children have the right care and nutrition, that early childhood programmes are in place where possible is absolutely vitally important. And the third conclusion that we draw is really about the role of the school. We're going towards the universalisation of primary schooling, particularly for both girls and boys, which has been really great progress. But there's a really important need to ensure that while children are growing in school, that they're actually learning basic skills that can equip them with what they need for later in life. So ensuring that educational quality is there and is supported by both what happens outside of school, but also what happens within the school gates is really, really important. The fourth conclusion that we draw is about adolescence as a second critical window. There's rising attention on adolescence, particularly as a time where differences between boys and girls often increase, very often disadvantaging girls. We've emphasised the vital importance of early childhood, but adolescence is also a second critical period where policy ought to be looking to sustain investments to try to maximise later life chances. And finally, we highlight the importance of what happens in early adulthood, when children are making that transition into young adulthood. And there we emphasise that while it's absolutely vital that children have had the right schooling, it's also important that they have the right opportunities when they get to adulthood.